Hi, my name is Heather Clements. Today I will be presenting Sexual Education, a Journey Through European Countries. Let's begin by discussing what the current state of the U.S. sexual education system looks like. Currently in the United States, sexual education material, implementation, and comprehensiveness are decided at a state level. Schools do not follow the same format throughout the country, and in many areas there is simply no sexual education to speak of. In the areas where there are sexual health education classes taking place, there's a limited discussion around contraception, STIs, abortion, adoption, health services, etc. There's no current education around techniques for performing sexual acts. There is a lack of understanding from the educator perspective, as well as from the student perspective around sex positivity. Sex is very taboo to talk about, especially in a school environment. We were first introduced to Nora and Elizabeth from Norway and discussed their program, Mental Health and Human Rights Info. Nora is a professor of psychology as well as the chair of the board for HHRI. She has a background in psychological treatment of refugees. Elizabeth is the executive director of HRI and has a background in health and developing countries. Mental Health and Human Rights Info provides training programs internationally for trauma helpers, specifically in areas that have been engaged in war. They offer a gender-focused approach and are accepting of all gender identities. In the work that they do, they focus on integrity and respect for trauma victims. They offer training around the butterfly woman metaphor as an approach to overcoming post-traumatic stress disorder. Nora and Elizabeth have created and provided a training manual on how to help survivors of sexual violence. Their work aims to create more helpers worldwide. There are a number of things that the U.S. could adopt from their approach to sexual education, including providing better training for educators and in that creating more helpers, understanding that sexual violence and trauma are more common than we may understand, and through that approach, each interaction around sexual education as if the student may have experienced sexual violence. We could work to focus on hope for all of our students, especially those that have been in areas of conflict or have experienced trauma. We could improve our understanding of trauma responses and their triggers, work to better understand cultural significance when discussing sexual trauma or sexual education in general, incorporate the metaphor of the butterfly woman into our education system, as well as provide stabilization techniques for our students. We next visited Sweden and joined in a conversation with Christer Fahlman. Christer is the founder of the Rainbow House in Stockholm, Sweden, and is their supervisor and chief therapeutic gardener. Christer has a background in structures and gardens and has spent 20 years in the music industry. He is a member of the LGBTQ+ community and is a resident of the Rainbow House. The Rainbow House is a retirement community for aging LGBTQ+ people. It is the first concept of its kind in Sweden and works to provide affordable housing in a comfortable community for gay people. It is located just a 30-minute walk from downtown Stockholm and provides residents a social environment where they are free to be themselves and have a sense of security as they age. The biggest thing that the U.S. could take from this amazing place is their ability to age without fear. This sort of housing environment provides a sense of security and inclusivity. It provides affordable care for people as they age, which is something that the U.S. is challenged with. The Rainbow House provides opportunities for keeping active and provides provides care for people if they are ailing. Next, we discuss sexual education in Belgium with Eduardo Bracho. Eduardo is a student at the University of Leuven in Belgium and is a member of the Belgian Medical Student Association, or BEMSA for short. He is currently getting his master's in human sexuality and is part of the International Federation of Medical Students Association. BEMSA provides a sex-positive approach to sexual education and believes that sexual education is a lifelong pursuit. They work to incorporate sexual education in this classroom as well as at home and recognize that sexual education is different in the Dutch part of Belgium versus the French part of Belgium. BEMSA works to provide education around contraception, STIs, sexual techniques and practices, as well as emotional sexual education. Some of the things that we can take from Belgium's sexual education format is their sex-positive approach to education. They seem to have clarity around expectations of sexual education and have implemented it effectively. The U.S. could clarify its expectations around sexual education. In Belgium, they also provide opportunities for students to discuss setting boundaries around sex and take the taboo out of sex. In addition, the U.S. could implement the 4 colors reference for decision-making around sexual acts. Also, they could use an STI transmission game that I believe would create engagement for students and bring greater understanding to how STIs are passed from one person to another. Our next stop on our journey was to talk with Bear in the Netherlands. Bear is a registered sex educator in the Netherlands. They've worked as an event coordinator with Proud. They began their work in the sex industry 25 years ago as a sex phone operator, then became a professional dominatrix and started doing queer porn in 2016. Bear works with the Prostitution Information Center, which offers tours of the red light district in Amsterdam, known there as De Walen. The Prostitution Information Center runs a storefront that also serves as an information center for people visiting the area. The the PIC has played a key part in changing Dutch law to allow prostitution as well as protect the rights of sex workers. PIC works to bring change to the social situation by introducing new laws to protect sex work. I believe the U.S. could do better to support sex workers in the U.S. by legalizing prostitution and creating laws that would protect sex workers. Next, we talked with Droshko Kostovsky, who worked in many countries but is French by nationality. Droshko is the lead youth educator with IPPF, which is the International Planned Parenthood Federation, and has spent most of his career in sexuality education. He has spent time working as an HIV peer educator and explores masculinities in sexual education. The IPPF provides services worldwide to underserved populations. They do their work in schools to support teachers as well as working in community centers. Often they work with people with disabilities as well as the LGBTQ+ community. IPPF partners with the World Health Organization to help spread health education and provides a holistic approach to sexual education. The U.S. could do better to partner with IPPF to implement their already strong sexual education program within the U.S. Following in the footsteps of the IPPF, the U.S. could make guidelines around sexual education clearer for the entire country. The U.S. could work to provide sexual education in both a formal and non-formal manner. The U.S. could strengthen its efforts to maintain all information, including sexual education, because of the importance of all that is included there. With all of this, the U.S. could also partner more closely with the World Health Organization and could work to make contraception more accessible, especially in underserved populations. Finally, we got to spend time with Grants and Isis. Isis is the founder and president of Association FARDA. She works to create and present workshops for migrants and refugees in France. The workshops provide open access to sexual education. Garance works with Association FARDA and is responsible for communications and finance within the organization. FARDA presents to minority populations and approaches sexual education from a biological, psychological, and emotional perspective, as well as providing information from a legal and social understanding. FARDA has two missions, awareness and training. They work to provide psychological support, advocacy, and creation of intercultural links. Some things to know about France are that abortion is legal and supported in France's system, adoption is paid for by the healthcare system in France, and sex workers are frequently marginalized people. The U.S. could work to provide sexual education classes to marginalized groups and refugees that do not have access to comprehensive sexual education. The U.S. could also work to include biological, psychological, and emotional information around sexual education, as well as presenting information pertaining to legal and social factors. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. I've truly enjoyed learning about sexual education systems in Europe and look forward to pushing the U.S. to a more inclusive future state of sexual education.